let me know when I have to start. We are live already, right? Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, the CB Café, which is part of the CB Fest that we are celebrating at the moment, and also the 70th anniversary of the Ifmsa. Today, we will speak about the evolution of capacity building throughout the last years in the Federation. I know it seems as it has always been here and we have always had many trainers and many events and workshops, but actually it has not always been like this. Today, you will have the chance to meet former VPCBs and TSDDs that have been working in the Federation, and you will understand a bit more about how we have come to this point today. And we can also reflect on what's still to come for the upcoming years. I am Lucia. I am the Vice President for Capacity Building for this term. And today I will be moderating this together with Amin, the Ifmsa VP PRC for this term. Hello, Amin.
Hello, Lucia. Thank you so much for giving me this platform and this space. I personally am very, very honored to be amongst these wonderful people that we have with us and that I will be introducing to you, to the public. So I will be going through our guests one by one, and I would like to kindly ask you to all answer the question very briefly. Where have you started in Ifmsa and where are you now? So starting with Marin, who was Ifmsa TSD of 2012-2013. Andre, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Amin. So hello to you guys. My name is Marin. I was the Training Support Division Director for the term 2012-2013. And I'm actually very, very honored and very grateful for this invitation. And I haven't been in touch with Ifmsa for a long time, but I do have very good memories. And yeah, it was a term that was very, very challenging for me. I'm currently doing traumatology and orthopedics in Switzerland. Almost finishing the specialty, and it's nice to see there are a lot of people on the way and hopefully in my shoes in a couple of years. So yeah, now I give the floor to the next training. Well, at that time, we were part of the last training support division director, so it's more the capacity building vice presidency. And if I don't get it wrong, the next one was Andre.
Yes, thank you very much. So from Andres to Andre, much like Andres, I'm also right now in Switzerland. I'm working in Geneva at the Slovene Permanent Mission to the UNOG. So my tasks involve connecting with the WHO for my government. So, but also just before that, I was working also in the NGO sector, in the youth health sector. And I'm still currently also the president of the International Youth Health Organization. Where did I come from? Yeah, definitely started my job, my work in Ifmsa first locally and nationally, I guess like most of us, in Slomsik in Slovenia. And then moved to work also more internationally as a regional assistant for capacity building. I guess when there was the first team on capacity building. And then as the second VPCB. And I guess that's enough for the introduction, and I'll pass the floor to Frida.
Thank you, Andre. So I'm Frida. I'm from Ifmsa Mexico. Well, no, it's AMEF Mexico now. It used to be Ifmsa Mexico back then. I am the VPCB from 2017, 2018, and I was actually I was CBRA during Andre's term, so I learned a lot of the things that I needed to be VPCB. Thanks to working with him, I have to really acknowledge that and thank Andre for that. He was a great boss back then. So yeah, I graduated last year, actually, from med school. And right now I'm working with a national, I'm working with an NGO on topics of sexual health and sexual health and reproduction, education and rights. And besides that, because that's actually also volunteering. So like an actual job, I am working on clinical research protocols, which is very interesting because most of my education, like most of my medical education life, it was all IFMSA. Well, not most of it, all of it. It was all IFMSA and public health. And I was never too into a lot of research. And that's exactly why I looked for what I'm doing right now. So that's an area of medicine I wanted to know about, and I am thoroughly enjoying. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm in the middle of, I'm in that part in which I just graduated. I'm not sure what I want to do yet. Do I want a specialty? Do I gonna go into public health? Do I want to do a master's? So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And so I will pass on the floor to Georg.
Thank you, Frida. Hello, everyone. My name is Georg Schwarzel. I'm coming from Ifmsa, Austria, where I started in IFMSA, and I also then went over to the European team back then in a different position than the CBRA, but still in the European team, and also got to know, especially training a lot with Andre. I made my TNT with Andre, as back then most of people in IFMSA. I'm still wrapping up my studies in these months, hopefully, and I'm looking forward to go to pediatric psychiatry, hopefully in the future. But currently, or since 1.5 years ago, I'm part of the regional parliaments. I went into politics, and for the past couple months, I've been in the team around the health minister of Austria. So that's what I'm doing right now, but I'm also looking very much forward to this exchange here.
Hello, everyone. I am Haider Nouri. I am from IFMSA Iraq. I started in IFMSA in 2013, and I joined capacity building in 2014-15. I was never part of the IFMSA international team of capacity building, but I worked a lot on the local level in capacity building, and I jumped from being a president to being the VPCB for the term 1920. Currently, I'm working as a medical doctor in the ER, and I'm still trying to figure out what specialty I want to go in the future. So yeah, this is kind of something hard when you graduate after med school. Let's see what life goes through. I'm also still working in the NGO sector. I'm working for an NGO called the International Medical Corps as a community health officer as well. So far, this is my life after IFMSA. Passing it over to Lucia.
Hello again. Well, as you know, I am Lucia. I started in IFMSA not in capacity building, but in SCORA and some other standing committees. But then eventually I became the general assistant for capacity building during Haider's term, and that is how I became in love with capacity building and training and everything. Right now, I am the vice president for capacity building, as you know, and I graduated from med school last year. Right now, I am working as a medical doctor here in Spain, but I am right now looking forward to going abroad to become a specialist. I still don't know where, I don't know what, just like many of us apparently, which makes me happy. But yeah, I think that for now I have enough work with this job and the IFMSA. And now I will pass it on to my successor, who is Zain.
Thank you, Lucia. Hi, I'm Zain Fenner from IFMSA Iraq. I'm a fifth-year medical student. I'm so grateful and honored to be here with all of you amazing VPCBs, and it's nice to see all the faces with the names in the reports and in all our Google Drive. I started as a freshly graduated TNT participant in Frida's term with her signature and the stamp on my certificate, and then attended my first NMO management and IFMSA training in Georg's term, and then became the CBRA for the EMR on Haider's term, and I'm currently the IFMSA CBGA with Lucia, and I will be your VPCB for your next term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andres, Andre, Frida, Georg, Haidar, Lucia, and Zain for introducing yourselves, as well as for being here with us. We are very, very grateful and honored to have you to celebrate the IFMSA 70th anniversary, which is very, very exciting. Obviously, all of you have had and will have a huge, huge impact on the development of capacity building within our federation. And obviously the capacity building that we currently have, whether it's all the diverse workshops and the online trainings and all of everything that is going on right now wouldn't have been possible without each and every one of you here. So we thank you so much for being here with us. And speaking of that impact and of development of capacity building, we will be going now through the history of the development of capacity building throughout the years. And Lucia will share her screen. I think she did that already. So I will give it back to her and she will walk us through the history and the evolution of capacity building within the IFMSA.
Thank you very much. Well, now, as Amin said, we are going to make a review about the history of capacity building within the Federation. I hope you are curious about this, and I can promise that it will be very different from what you can expect because it has really changed and transformed in the last years. So to begin with, we will go with Andres. Andres, you may have the floor now.
Thank you very much, Lucia. So yeah, it's definitely like a time machine trip. When we go back to 2012, at the end of the day, you got to imagine that IFMSA at that moment was developing. It was very developed in certain standing committees and more the governing positions, the regional assistants. But trainings-wise, it was very undeveloped. I had the luck of meeting with some of the trainers before me. But you got to imagine at that time, IFMSA or the trainings division didn't have any structure or practically any management or resource, or in any case, nothing of what it does, of what it has right now. Just to give you a couple of ideas, at the end of the day, the trainers were locally trained from the federations that actually had the capacity to train people, but most of the needs of the federation were saying, well, look, you know, I've got my federation, I'd like to have trainers, but I have nobody that can train me and I have nobody that can help me get to that point. A concrete example, in Spain, we were probably 2 or 3 trainers. For me, it was relatively complicated to actually become trainer. Part of my growing in IFMSA, I went from local to international, practically jumping the national step simply because of opportunities that I had to become trainer faster than usual. But most of the people in Spain didn't have access to trainings. And we had exactly the same problem internationally. Another value that surprised me at the time is that IFMSA was doing probably 1 or 2 TNTs a year as a federation. Of course, certain local federations managed to do more, or the NMOs managed to do a lot more. The Netherlands, for example, always had a lot of trainers and had a lot of training capacity. But worldwide, it was very, very complicated and relatively rudimentary. So my first goal was practically start to build a team, making sure that every region had at least one representative that was active, that could answer most of the questions, that could help and guide the existing trainers to train more people. And at the same time, try and train as many people as we could so that afterwards things could start moving on within the federations. Strangely enough, it's very fun to see right now that most of you guys were regional assistants of capacity building and things like that, but that's something that didn't exist at that time. And we started on that spot. Actually, the 2 training support division directors and the first vice president for capacity building were regional assistants. For example, Gustavo was one of the regional assistants for Latin America. And Ahmed Reda, who sadly both of them can't be here today, but They were the regional assistants at that time. The second thing that for me was very important was try and reach every federation. Not only once we started to see that there was a lack of trainings, we started to see that more than the trainings, the problem was that people didn't have the resources or the capacity to help develop their federations. Most of the presidents came around and said, hey, look, I'd love to have trainers, but I still need a lot of structure within my federation to be able to get to the trainings level. And it was reaching out to them and helping them out to actually have the resources of IFMSA, but locally. Of course, this came with the, we tried to increase a lot the frequency of the training sessions within the GAs, within the regional meetings, and within also the national GAs. That's a step that wasn't done up to that point, and we started to see officials come to the national GAs, help out, be present, and train as much as possible. And we started to do something that I haven't heard a lot since, but it was something that we used to do. Well, we tried to do a lot at that time was the TOTs, the training all trainers, not only offering training for those for those students who didn't have absolutely no training in capacity building, but also helping the already trained trainers to reach out within the capacities of IFMSA and develop their capacities to help each federation on their point. And probably the last big step that we tried to achieve was try to break a little bit the structure of trainings themselves and not say, okay, trainings is something besides IFMSA, it's a different group, but more training is actually something that can be found at any level for any point. If you start to see what a president needs to be able to manage his own federation, a lot of his needs are mainly soft skills that'll help him increase his efficiency as in his term of presidency, and also be able to reach more students. So it was breaking the structure of simply saying, okay, the trainings will only be within the training sessions and the TNTs. In my term, we went to that point where we said, okay, well, we're going to go one step further and actually have specific training sessions for the presidents. Because at the end of the day, the 20 presidents that we had, or the presidents that we had in the GA said, look, guys, we love the trainings, they're fun, they're dynamic, but we specifically need help in this area. And that's where we started to specialize a little bit more to fill the needs of the federation. And of course, well, one of the funny things is that seeing the presentation, I see that there were still problems with certificates right now, and there were problems with certificates at that point. It was a bureaucracy thing, but it was also an important step for every trainer and every training to be able to say, okay, I'm able to do this, and this is exactly what was it within my training. And that's something that we start to standardize then. I remember that when I did my TNT, I think I received my certificate like 8 or 10 months later, and nobody knew exactly what was within the TNT or what we had done. And it's something that I found a shame, because at the end of the day, it's we all invest our time, or at that time, that's what we used to do. That was the fun part of our studies. It required a lot of time, but at the end of the day, being able to finish and say, well, this is actually what I've done, and I started here, and I'm actually at this point now, was something that for me was important to try and set for the future. And then with Ahmed, well, when I left, I was very glad to see that there were people coming behind, that already the structures of the regional assistance and capacity building started to build themselves. And his main job was focusing on trying to stabilize what we had done in 1 year. It was very good, because we worked together from the first day that I started in IFMSA until the end. So he was, from what I remember and from what I see right now, was able to keep the things going on for 1-2 years. He was in for 2 terms. And it was nice. But that was our idea. His main goal at the beginning was say, okay, well, we've done a lot. Let's make sure that it sticks, and let's make sure that it follows up in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And yeah, that was mainly my work then. It was a great time, a lot of movement, and I'm very glad to see that at least the dynamics and the general good feel of IFMSA and of the trainings remains and continued going on. So, well, thank you very much in any case, Lucia, for the invitation. And I'm very eager to see what would happen in between. You got to imagine that for me, I closed that book because I closed my studies at that point. But I'm very glad to open it now and see what has become of it. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Andres. Now we would pass on the next two terms who were led by Ahmed Reda. Unfortunately, he was not able to join us today, but luckily for us, we have Andre with us, who has some more information about what was done during these terms and also the next term. So I will give the floor to him. Andre, you can go.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'll try to pick up where Andres left off. And I have the privilege of speaking right now after a person I think who also achieved the legendary status within IFMSA. When I was beginning to engage in IFMSA training or TNT, there was this name thrown around like Andres Marin. That's like he's like the coolest trainer ever and so on. He's the one who set us all up, and it's great to see these things because when I started engaging in these things, and it's important to note that it was a bit, I guess, in the second term of Reda. What you mentioned now was, it was a completely different face to it. If we go back to the previous slide, and you're saying there were 2 TNTs before 2012, the picture there was completely different. Every GA, all the regional meetings more or less had a TNT as a pre-meeting. And then there were also TNTs being done on a sub-regional level. So I think, and that speaks a lot to what was actually done also in the subsequent terms from Andres. So during the Reda's term, and Reda, I think, is another one of those people who have that legendary status there. And yeah, I think what Andres started speaking of, all the things, all the ideas that were brought in. Let's make this more accessible to people. Let's really work on these things. Let's not keep it on the local level, but make it international, make it standard, make it a thing, basically, make it a brand almost. That has really consolidated in both of Reda's terms. I think in a way both started in the quantity at first, I guess, but then also in the quality. And at some point there was a mind shift saying, let's change from the perspective of, oh, now suddenly everyone is a trainer, and I wouldn't say the value of training has been lost a little bit, but at least the identity a little bit. So what does a trainer even mean? So I think that was also one of the first times that there was a bigger discussion on IOGs being introduced, and there were actually for the first time sort of guidelines. I don't know, Andres, if that was already in your term, but I know in that term there were sort of guidelines put into place what every TNT should have, which sessions it should have, what it should cover, so that for sure you manage to get a trainer as a product of this workshop that you sort of know what you can rely on, together with the certification, which meant also having a graduation session and so on. So I'm not sure, like I said, if that was already there before, but for sure it very much consolidated and became standard in Reda's terms, I would say. Not maybe the first one, definitely the second one. That was already established. And it's funny that how things change very quickly, because that was the standard there. It was not even disputed. It was not even a discussion anymore. It was just something that people have taken for granted, as if that was there for years or decades even. So it's interesting to see how things change very quickly. But then also, of course, what started happening is towards the end of Reda's term, it was also the last term of the TSDD. So we had the IFMSA reform. And then we went on into the next term, which I guess you can already change into, which was Gustavo's term. And all of a sudden we had this capacity building thing, right? So Gustavo was the first VPCB, and I had the honor of also serving there as a regional assistant for Europe at the time. And I think when we got into the term, and that's also something that's later on my slide, was like, what is CV? what is capacity building? It's like there was something lost a little bit in translation. How do we transfer something as the training support division into an executive board position, but not necessarily on the side of governments, but how that reflects in the organization itself? Because obviously this has become something that supposedly would have to be integral to everything what happens in the organization, not as a separate division. Like Andres was saying earlier, yes, it's fun having training sessions or workshops, but a lot of people actually saw there's something extra to the work we're already doing. And this was really the transition, the shift to saying capacity building in itself, it is not a goal in itself. It has to serve a specific purpose. It has to serve, like Andres was saying, for the presidents, for example, to acquire specific skills that they will need in their position, or in standing committees that they will need in whatever they're pursuing. And I think that was the first big step that was happening also in that term, is that all of the standing committee work, most of it, not all, but most, for their own workshops, for their own sessions that were happening during regional meetings or general assemblies, shifted under CB. And all of a sudden, there was an EB member who had to take care of everything that was happening also in the standing committees, shared together with the VPA at the time. Because of the projects and the programs, there was a bit of a division on that. So I guess that was sort of that shift. And then I can talk a little bit more in what was happening in that term in Europe. Before I get to my term as VPCB, we were also trying to make a capacity building strategy for Europe at the time. We thought it would be a good idea to incorporate this idea of saying capacity building for the sake of capacity building doesn't make sense. So let's see what we want to achieve in Europe. That our training, all of our workshops, all of our sessions have another purpose. And soon we realized that it didn't sort of work, and that capacity building strategy actually became the strategy for the European region, because we saw that we need to find what we wanted to achieve as a region, so that then we can tailor all of the training, all of the capacity building according to that. And I think that was a very important lesson learned for the next term. And now we can move on to the next one. Is that how do we then, how do we incorporate that on a global scale? And again, that was the time when the IFMSA strategy was running out and we needed a new one. So actually, I personally, among other EB members, was very much involved with creating the IFMSA strategy and taking care of the process that was really taking pretty much the whole term from start to finish to complete. And we were already then thinking, where does capacity building fit into that? So sort of trying to integrate it as much as possible to the daily life of capacity building, basically. To the daily life of IFMSA and its development. And another concept that we started developing at the time that was very much connected to that were competency models. So what do, for example, different officials need in order to be able to take out their terms as efficiently as possible? What kind of competencies they need? So what kind of skills, what kind of knowledge, what kind of attitudes, so that we would have a list of everything that we need to achieve in terms of capacity building. And that would serve as a model for the future of how we would do our sessions, our workshops, and offer different kinds of more tailored, let's say, content to the officials, either on the international level or even regional or national or local. However, as you see down in the challenges, these were really, really big plans. And that's also something that unfortunately we didn't manage to finish at the time. We only had this, I would say, great idea, and we sort of made it halfway through. And then, as you might know, that the term really ends very abruptly. And you might not have time for everything. But I would just like to list a couple of other achievements that happened during that term. And one was a new way of doing NMO management sessions. So before that, the NMO management sessions were a compendium of like 1 to 2 hour training sessions on different topics that you might need as an NMO manager, which as you can imagine, in 1 to 2 hour training sessions, you can only scrape the surface, and you can't really go so much into details with, let's say, finance management of your NMO. And that was also the feedback that we got from the previous years. So what we did then was that we made different streams, and we made NMO management sessions. We divided them into 4 streams so that one person would follow 2 of the streams, one after the other, and they could really go a little bit deeper in those topics. So it was fit for beginners, but also people who are a little bit more experienced in certain things could go even deeper in that, and they could really pick their specializations. And I think that's something that also that people stick with in the next years. But I guess Frida will talk more to that, or Georg, or we'll see. Let be surprised. Another thing that we started in that term for the first time was a Cbv workshop. So that's capacity building builders, because we also realized that every NMO or every structure can use its own, let's call it an education system, and you might need people who manage that as well. And these were our, again, sort of more experiments at the beginning, saying, okay, what does an NMO need in terms of skills so that they can facilitate skills building in other people? So we wanted to systematize it a little bit more. And I think the first Cbv workshop was taking place in the SRT in Austria, organized by Ifmsa Austria, and Georg, I know, was the head of the organizing committee at that time. It was definitely one of my favorite SRTs. So that was one, let's say, contribution. And then another one was essential leadership workshops, leadership skills workshop that we did as a pre-GA in our first GA. And that was maybe also connected to what Anders was saying earlier, is that we were really thinking of what kind of skills do the leaders of the organizations, let's say NMOs, or even later on an international level, what kind of skills do they need? So we had like an advanced leadership workshop. We continued also in that time with TOTs, and that's something that has really taken off also in Reda's and Gustavo terms. So there were plenty of TOTs happening, and they became more and more specialized. So it wasn't just the TOT as a generic one, let's say, but they started adding another level to it. So after TOT was a TET, training experience trainers, and those are specialized in different topics, like I attended one on leadership, but then there were others like on, I think, communication, on I don't know, I'll be making stuff up now, but they were a little bit more specialized. But that wasn't in our term. That was even before. I just remembered now, and I wanted to mention it. Then there's a point where it's missing. I added it quite late. I think during our term, there was also the first workshop that was done completely online. So it was like an online course. Personally, I can't take much credit for that. It was done by Ella, the standing committee director of public health at the time. So we already saw the transitions onto completely online spheres even before COVID. And I guess that trend has also been continuing after that. And then what I wanted, yes, of course, I think certificates is going to be a point we'll be touching upon in every single part of this presentation. So it was a transition to new certificates at the time together with the BPA. We not only wanted to make certificates which stated what you've achieved or what kind of competencies you've achieved in those workshops, but they're also, I think, digitally certified. So it was another sort of layer of legitimacy, but it added a lot of delays to our work and a lot of frustration on the side of some newly certified trainers that desperately wanted their certificates. So that was I think a silver lining that goes through all of our terms. So some of the challenges I already mentioned, first of all, was what is CB? What is this? Because before it was a very nice compartment in IFMSA that we used to call IFMSA training, but then CB started to become this ephemeral thing that actually fit into everything and nothing at the same time. So we needed quite a bit of time to see what our identity was. And then also, as I mentioned, we had really big plans, and not all of them we could follow through until the end. Now, luckily, a lot of them were actually picked up by our successors as well, who I've worked with very well. And I'm very happy with all the words that Frida and Georg said earlier. We had some really good times together, and I'm thankful to hear that they learned a lot also from our terms, but definitely also learned from them in our term, as the boss or the trainer. So so yeah, some of those things were actually picked up after, and I'm happy that I'm happy to say that they've seen the light of day in the end. But with this need, let's say, of defining what is capacity building, there also was a need for more standardization, for more operating guidelines, and there just wasn't the capacity within our term to finish everything. So with that, I would also like to finish the recap of those four terms, and give my word to the next presenter, who I guess is, well, I'll leave it back to you, Lucia, to keep facilitating this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Well, this was very interesting, and actually there were some things that I didn't even know myself, but I will wait for my turn to comment on that. And now I will give the floor to Frida. Frida, you can go.
Hi, thank you. So I think Andres and Andre will be happy to know that the whole TT, TOT kept until my term. I actually did both. I did a TT on NMO and financial management, actually. And then I did a TOT. I think actually Andre was there for my TOT. Oh, wait, no, I facilitated one with him. I did it before that. Okay. So anyways, continuing. So I'm not sure if it was during Gustavo's term or Andre's term where actually the the sub-regional training thing was created, so to speak. Because before that, it was just workshops, right? It was just training sessions and workshops. But since since capacity building wasn't as developed, there were not as many different workshops, of course. So this whole idea of having different workshops during the same event was very recent during my term. Actually, when I was like 2 years before my term, we were having the first SRT of the Americas. It was in Mexico when I was National Training Director. So when I was VPCB, like this whole thing was very new. There was not a lot of SRTs going on. And then they were, and then it started happening. And that's when we decided to come up with something we call the SRT reform form. It was pretty much like a little feedback survey so that we could have a better overview of what was happening in every region. That was the way that we could keep up with all the SRTs happening, because there were a lot. And we also could have a little insight into what happened, how they felt. I mean, without a feedback, you don't really know how to do things better. So that's what we did it for. But then also the thing that helped us the most was that at the end of the survey, you had to upload this document with the names of everybody who was who took a workshop. So you would upload the name of the workshop and then the name of the participants and their NMOs. So that was actually where we were taking the data to make the certificates. Because we were thinking, okay, how can we keep up with the certificates now that it was mentioned? It seems to be the original and ancestral problem of capacity building. And I bet that as capacity building has been evolving and more workshops are happening, it's probably becoming a harder, something even harder to keep up with. So we were trying to figure out a way in which we could keep up with the certificates. And this was something that worked for us back then, because in this way, we were having the names of the participants in a very fast way. As soon as the workshop was over, we could take all this information. And then we can also contact, in case anything we saw was missing, or maybe some things were not correct or whatever, since it just happened, we could ask the workshop coordinators for anything that might have happened. Then we also, so we realized that in the official IFMSA page, there is actually a calendar that it's supposed to be using. I mean, I don't know now, right? But back in my term, we were supposed to be using this calendar to add every IFMSA event there, but nobody was using it. So I asked, okay, so can I use it for capacity building? And they said, yes, perfect. So we took ownership of the IFMSA calendar on the IFMSA website, and we would upload every official capacity building event. As soon as we were approving these events internationally, I would have Lynn, who was my training assistant back then. I didn't have a general assistant now that I think it about, but she was pretty much my general assistant. So she would be the one who would help me to keep up with the capacity building calendar on the IFMSA website. And it was awesome because I think that you can remember all the time having people sending messages. At least as a CBRA, I would have people from my region asking, so when is an event happening in the region? And then as a VPCB, I would also have people from other regions asking, when's the next capacity building event? When is a TNT happening? So in this way, I could just send them the link and be like, okay, this is it. Check the the capacity building calendar, and you can see when an event is happening and where. Because actually there were people from, I always remember these people from Mexico who really wanted to do a TNT, and they actually went to, I'm not sure which SRT it was, but they went to Europe to do their TNT. So it was also a way of everybody knowing what's happening everywhere, because you never know who might have the opportunity. Maybe they were doing an exchange, or maybe they were just I don't know, like taking a trip or whatever, so they would be able to apply to be part of these workshops, even if they were not happening in the region. So something else that we worked on during my term were the databases. So as you can see, this whole capacity building thing was still pretty new. I was only the third BPCB ever. So as IFMSA internationally transitioned from training supervision to capacity building, and then slowly all the NMOs did with us. But until this day, actually, there's still a lot of NMOs, for example, who don't really have a capacity building vice president or representative, but rather still a training supervision director. So what we did was that we just started calling everybody CB representative, because they started having different titles. And then we realized we didn't have an updated database of all the CB representatives in the different parts of where capacity building in the training support division was, because not every NMO had it active. But some of them were still trying to go into this transition. So it was a nice way of putting all of them together in one place, because also we would have messages from people doing this transition. So it would be nice to, for example, get them in touch with people who just recently did that. So they would take some of their advice and along with their RAs. So in this database, we would write down if the capacity building representative was like their official title was capacity building, of if he was still training support division director, because sometimes they would ask us for help of people who have been there, so we can get them in touch. And then we decided to also have a different database for specifically TNT trainers. By my term, actually, a lot of workshops for the different standing committees were created. And I realized that they had a better organized and standardized database for the trainers. Maybe because they were also less trainers for the different standing committee workshops. But then I realized we needed something like that. Suddenly there were a lot of TNTs happening, and we needed to know everywhere where we had TNT trainers. And we also did a database. So we actually started a capacity building event database first, and then everything we had in that database, we put it in the capacity building calendar. So we kept on updating the capacity building event database because it had way more detail than the calendar. So that's where we update everything that was getting accepted. And then my general assistant would put it in the capacity building calendar for everybody to see on the website. something else that we did was we created an annual working plan for the capacity building international team. Sorry, my dog is here. So we created a capacity building CBAT annual working plan to try to, I think at some point, as the SRTs and capacity building started developing more, there were a lot of things happening, and we realized that this could be a way for the CBAT to better keep up with all the work that suddenly they had to do, which was a lot. We also started working on training sessions outlines, which was pretty much, there were a lot of different workshops happening and training sessions happening. And then we realized also that a lot of new training sessions were happening. So we decided, how about we do some sort of outlines of the basic training sessions that we have been facilitating so far for so many years, talking about soft skills, leadership, communication skills, motivation, stuff like that. Because we would have people asking us, for example, do I have to, specifically people who were new at facilitating TNTs. So they would ask us, like, is there something specific that I have to talk about in the leadership training or the motivation training? So that's where we came up with the idea of, how about we do these session outlines in which we pretty much tell people, okay, so this is what the training is about. This is the main topics that are ideally to be discussed. But at the end of the day, every training is yours. Like, as a facilitator, you are in your right of doing a training session the way you find it better. And more specifically, that is adapted for the people you are training, for their needs. But people will always have these questions about if there was something specific that they should be talking about. So that's when we started with the training session outlines, which actually became very important for the training resource center later, because there was this whole issue about some copyrights with the trainer database. So we had to do a little cleansing of the training resource center, and a lot of the content that was there was not open access. And so we had to get rid of all of that, which meant we lost almost half, if not a little more than half of all of the content we had in Trainers Resource Center, which was something, it was a big problem, because the Training Resource Center, at least for me, when I started as a trainer in IFMSA, it was something that was very useful. I would get a lot of information from there. So we realized that if we did the training sessions outlines, it would also be something that it was our own content. We were making it, so we own it. So we could help in this way every new trainer that was not sure how to or where to get information from. So we started developing this to upload it to the Training Resource Center, so all of the new trainers could have a place to go to. And then we also started with the capacity building internal operating guidelines draft. That was a whole issue itself. A lot of debate, a lot of trainers. Everybody had a lot of ideas on how it should go. But so when we started, it was hard, but then we all agreed in the way it should continue on, and then we could actually work on that. And if I remember correctly, actually, so we tried to do them first, and then a lot of issues came, and then we stopped, and then we reviewed what happened, and then we had a second take at it. So during this second take, which was when the actual draft was done, I think it was Georg who was in charge of that. He'll speak after me, so he'll probably speak about that. So he took on the leadership of the team that was in charge of the IOGs. So during my term, we just came up with a draft, which I hope was good enough for Georg to work on it for his term. And actually, Andre was talking before about the competency model. That was a big challenge during my term as well. So I know that you started, you drafted it, and during my term, we actually finished it. But then the thing was that it was a great idea. And the problem was we had all of this ideally skills that everybody in the TO should have, right? Every position should have. But then the question of, okay, so who was going to facilitate the workshops for the members of the TO for the skills that they could reinforce? So then that was one of the issues, because at the time, me as a VPCB personally did not have the time to do that, because I was already working on a lot of different stuff. So that was a question that was there, and I'm not sure what happened afterwards. So I managed to finish them, and then we realized that we need to define how we were going to facilitate these workshops for the TO, if maybe during their handover period or right when they started their term. So I'm not sure what happened with that, but that was a question back then, just in case Andre had Andre had any questions about what might have happened with the competency model. We talked about it. I'm not sure what happened after my term, but yeah, at least we finished it and realized it was a great idea, but it also required a lot of work. But so yeah, and then yeah, the certificates. We tried to keep up as better as we could with the certificates. I think most of them were actually issued by the end of the term, but I think I can probably say that we did issue all of them for my term. Maybe there were some that we didn't, but we did manage to issue most of them. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Frida. As all of you can see, some of the projects that were drafted or brainstormed some terms ago were now having a different shape or evolving during this term, and they kept on evolving in the upcoming terms. So I will not take long, and I will give the floor to Georg so that you can know what happened next in the next chapter of this story. Now, Georg, you can go.
Thank you, Lucia. Yeah, like every time confronted with the question of like what happened in your term, it's at the very first moment, it's like, oh, can I come up with a few things? But like once you start thinking about, and when you also listen to all the people before, there's so many things that come to your mind, but I really tried to keep it to the most important points and to keep it short. So as Frida already said, one of the main parts, the whole discussion around the capacity building internal operating guidelines, so the IOGs, was also very, very big part of our term, also because of one of the things that Andre said before. Because we also saw and faced the situation that there were so many trainings and so many new trainers, but we were not 100% sure if the quality of what we are doing is actually what should be expected from us. And that was a very important point where, and I also want to say that at this point, like all of us, like the VPCBs, we have been the front face of capacity building, but there were always a lot of people around us supporting us and giving us the ideas and actually do the work often. Because also what came with becoming part of the EB as VPCB is that there were so many things to do for the executive board, which made it also even more important to have a good team that you can rely on. But coming back to the discussion about the quality. So what we also said is that we all we tended to think in our universe of IFMSA, and we start having a discussion like what our other student organizations are doing, because however it's called, but there's always something as capacity building, as training, and so on and so on, which also brought us to the point that we said, okay, we have one of the least hours having for trainer education. And so we had a big discussion and it was a hard way, let's say, to really reform also the trainer education, to reform also, and especially that was a very interesting discussion, like how can we merge and how can we bring together all the trainer educations from the standing committees and also the trainer education in general. And also because, like all my predecessors said already, that capacity building was very important in IFMSA and everybody knew. But we thought it's very important also to bring them to the Constitution and bylaws, because back in my term, we didn't have any chapter in the Constitution and bylaws, which also made it difficult to find a specific way, a good structure to change IOGs. We had a paper that someone said, these are the IOGs, but we haven't actually had a procedure for changing them. This is why we added the chapter of capacity building also in the Constitution and bylaws, which set the way for us to develop them further in the future. And also, as written here, we had actually the first capacity building plenary during a GA, which was also a big discussion, because whenever it's about in the TO, in the team of officials, to talk about, okay, let's talk about how we're gonna set the agenda for a meeting. Everyone of course wants to have some time for it, and whenever there's a new thing, something else probably needed to be reduced. But still, we had the first capacity building plenary. We set it for an hour. It was way too short. It was a huge mess. There were so many discussions because we had this huge reform for the IOGs and we only had 1 hour. But even though it was a mess, it was, I think, a very, very important point in also this kind of history for capacity building, because as far as I could follow also over the past years, the many things that we started and definitely did not finish during this year were still continued in the past terms after mine, which was a very important point. And also because we said we need to get some new ways for training, because also, of course, it was a big part to say we need one more thing for the quality. It was also the part where we set the ground for the trainers pool, which was a huge discussion, because like, how can we do that? How can we make sure, how shall we do with all the trainers that are already there? And as far as I saw now, there is a trainers pool and I think it's working, which makes me really happy, and also kind of confirms that we have been on the right track back then. But also because we said we need to give more opportunities to people who cannot maybe afford to go all around the world or to go to certain events, to find a way to participate as well in these opportunities for training. We back then even we had 135 NMOs, which probably right now are even more, but of course not all of them had the access to training. And my term was the last full term without Corona. So we have been lucky enough, even though we by far did not finish the whole part about online training, but at least we started the discussion and people knew about it and people were expecting something, which I think was a good part. That then afterwards it was continued by my successors also in this way. And also still, as I said, a very big part of the term was also to coordinate all the standing committee directors together with the vice president for activities, coordinating the team as well. But yeah, just to wrap it up, we had a lot of structural discussions. I think we managed with the whole team to bring capacity building constitutionally to another level, in the sense of, okay, bringing it to the bylaws, but also to start off a few new projects. But as my previous colleague said, it's never enough time, but then even more, it's good to see over a time frame of 5 or 10 years, because then you see what's happening. But yeah, 1 year is never enough. But usually it's enough for one person to take in the EB, because it's also very, very exhausting. It was definitely one of the most exhausting times of my life. I learned a lot. I learned also to step down, actually, in the sense of like not go until the edge all the time, because it also can be dangerous. So it was an amazing experience. I can just recommend everyone, but still it's voluntary and you should not go down on it. But hopefully with some more positive vibes I can give to my successor.
Thank you very much, Georg. Yeah, that's completely true. Working as a VPCB or any EB member, or working in IFMSA in general, is hard, and it consumes most of your time and sometimes your motivation. But well, as we can see, it is usually very fruitful. And I am happy to know that in the end, the conclusions and the memories that you have from this term are positive. And now we will continue with the next VPCB, who was Haider.
Thanks, Lucia. coming to the term 1920, like as my colleagues previously mentioned, starting from the first term of having a BPCB in IFMSA, capacity building was developing. And in my term, it reached to a level that we can say it's quite well developed. And it was one of the, let's say, strongest capacity building structures along other student organizations. So the main idea when I came to the term, I was thinking of standardizing things, because we had so many procedures, we had so many workshops, different proposals, different forms to be filled, and it was quite complicated for NMOs rather than the TO as well, and also for us as capacity building IT to go with all of this. So the idea came of standardizing the procedures we have in IFMSA, and there where we started first with the SRTs. The beginning of my term, we standardized all the workshop templates that we have for all the workshops in IFMSA, and we standardized also the SRT's preliminary permission and the SRT preliminary approval form as well as the SRT report form. It was quite nice. So NMOs can only fill like 1 or 2 forms, and then it's for us also easier to check all the applications and approve SRTs. And it helped us to approve SRTs like even faster. And we had quite a lot of SRTs at the beginning of the term until COVID came and like everything stopped, unfortunately. Moving to the next point, at the beginning of the term, we were also thinking, so yeah, like what were going to be our main goals during the term? We decided to divide the vision of the term into 2 main streams. First, NMOs development, where we work on developing the NMOs on the national level, and the other stream was trainers education, which I will talk about later. But then we also were thinking like, what part of NMOs development do we need to develop? Like what NMOs need from us to work on, like what training sessions, what workshops, what should we propose for pre-GAs, pre-regional meetings, and so on. And there when we decided to have an idea of conducting the capacity building baseline assessment at the beginning of the term, where we tried as much as possible to have one-on-one meeting with each NMO through the CBRAs. And there where we had a very long discussion about what this NMO needs from us as capacity building IT. And from there, we had some strategies or plans to implement capacity building in different regions. And also for some of the NMOs, we helped them to have a strategy for their own NMO and capacity building. And based on that that baseline assessment that we conducted, we went forward with the capacity building body system. Yeah, I wouldn't say that it was quite well implemented, because there were also issues with time availability when it comes to CB representatives and so on. But in general, it was the beginning of the idea. And I think it was quite nice to link NMOs to different capacity building groups where they can learn from each other. Some NMOs were already quite developed when it comes to CB structure. Some were quite developed when it comes to trainers education, and linking them together will help both of them to grow further. Moving next, we went to the NMO management sessions. We kept on the same streams that were started in Andre's term, I guess, which is mainly like, there are some main streams that we go in NMO management sessions, and then we go into different streams where every NMO can send a representative, whether it's standard presentation or finances or public relations or any other aspect of IFMSA where we work in. But what we started new in my term is that we started to implement more, let's say, dynamic ways of giving training sessions. We started one of the most amazing things for me, which was a scavenger hunt during NMO management session, where participants can really experience the chain of non-formal education and learning sessions and so on. And it was really interesting to see that being implemented when you have like 120 or 130 participants in NMO management sessions. Moving to the next GA online, we started the online NMO management sessions, which was super hard because like capacity building is different. It's not a webinar. We try to focus on having small groups of people so we can make sure that the information is being passed correctly. So we divided NMO management sessions into 4 streams where we had 20-25 participants in each stream, and mainly participants can choose where they would like to know more about, what do they like to learn, and they join the NMO management sessions online. And I think it was one of the most amazing experience I had in the term, even though I was quite stressed and afraid about it, because like it's hard to transfer NMO management sessions from a physical settings where we all used to into an online setting. But yeah, I think it worked well, and I think it worked even more well in this term during Lucia's in March meeting. We brought the concept again of Cbv Workshop, which already started in Andre's term, but it vanished somewhere in the middle, and then it came back. And it was really nice. We implemented in the pre-regional meeting of EMR. And in that workshop, we changed the structure of the workshop a bit to fit the needs of the NMOs that attended the workshop. And the main outcome of the workshop was that we created capacity building strategies for the NMOs who presented in the workshop. And there were different NMOs, and we made sure to follow up with them through the regional assistant later after the EMR to make sure that those strategies are being implemented in a correct way and being handed over to the next civil representatives of that NMOs as well. It was also supposed to happen in the pre-APRM in Asia Pacific, but due to COVID, that meeting was canceled, so we couldn't implement that workshop there as well. Moving next to one of the, let's say, the most important achievements in that term, which is the online platform. As Georg mentioned, the draft of inventing a new platform for capacity building in IFMSA was already started in his term. with the help of Jose, the VPRC back then. In my term, I worked a lot with the VPRC SAD to try to see like what are the needs? What do we need from this online platform? How do we envision it? Is it going to be open access? Like what courses are we going to implement? And we did a lot of studies. We checked different student organizations, different platforms. We reached the conclusion in the end that if we want to implement an online platform as it is, we will need to hire a consultant company to develop this platform for us, so we can have, let's say, a true dynamic sessions when it comes to online sessions. And we ended the term with signing a contract with one of the consultant companies, and they were supposed to finish the online platform during this term. So yeah, we can hear more about this when Lucia comes, and I think they already started some sessions on their online platform already. Next. When it comes to trainers education, like unfortunately, I think all the VPCBs agree with me. Like in IFMSA, we are quite well developed when it comes to CB structures and procedures, but when it comes to trainers education, as the previous VPCBs are already mentioning, we lack the proper hours of trainers education when we compare it to other student organizations and so on. And that was a huge discussion that happened started in the IOGs and Freda's term and continued to York's term as well, where animals were resisting kind of the change of trainers education because they also feel that it might be overwhelming from different aspects logistically and so on. So what we did in my term is we wanted to start this process step by step. So we worked on implementing a new trainers education framework, which we divided IFMSA workshops starting from the most smallest workshop was the mini FADI, which was already drafted in the IOGs, and then moving on to the TNT, which we also restructured, but we didn't vote on it because we didn't have an online physical capacity in Plenary back then. So we handed over to the next term, which hopefully will happen in Panama, I guess. And also we started a new workshop called the Advanced Thematic Workshop. So instead of having TOT and TET, we decided to have one workshop. It's the same idea of having the TET, like specialize in one topic. So example, Advanced Thematic Workshop on session design, Advanced Thematic Workshop on leadership, and so on. So you can have more specialization when it comes to trainers. And maybe this also can be added later in the trainers pool, that those trainers are specialized in leadership and so on. It's quite a new idea, but like in the future, I think will have a huge impact on IFMSA. We also implemented the trainers pool, which was a very huge discussion among standing committees, because like what workshops and standing committees are eligible to graduate trainers, what workshops are not eligible to graduate trainers. Like we all know that not all workshops and standing committees, they have the proper hours of trainers education, the topics that they need for them to become a trainer. And there where we sat with the standing committee directors and we standardized this somehow. We finished half the procedure, and I think half of it is already completed now by Lucy at the beginning of her term. So now we can say, like in each IFMSA standing committee, we do have a workshop for that standing committee graduate trainers, specifically in the topics related to the area of that standing committee, after making sure of the quality, because we made sure that the trainers education hours that we need for them to become a trainers are included in the agenda of that workshops, and it's already standardized. The last idea was the trainers camp, which was something that we really wanted to do since the beginning of the term, where we can gather trainers all together. And in this camp, we can have different workshops. It might be a new TNT for new trainers. It can also be advanced thematic workshops. It can also be some evenings where trainers can sit and share their experiences. It's the first idea of having a gathering, especially for trainers in IFMSA. The concept note is ready. We drafted it and everything was fine. But then because of COVID, we didn't manage to implement it in my term. And I don't think it's going to happen in this term as well. So hopefully in the next term with Zain, the trainers camp will be implemented. And I will be happy if we all can go there and meet again in IFMSA. So a brief, that was what happened in my term, 1920. And I think most of those ideas are already being continued now in Lucia's term. So I'm very happy to hear what Lucia is doing now.
Thank you, Haider. Well, indeed, I was already quite active during this term since I was the general assistant and I was participating in many of these projects. But now let's speak about the current term. The term, well, this is still Haider's term and his international team. But now let's speak about my term, the term of Corona. Yeah, this was indeed a quite challenging term. Since the very beginning of it, we already had the pandemic going on, and that meant a huge obstacle for many of our projects because, of course, we were not able to travel, to have physical events, to have physical SRTs. But well, you will see now some of the projects that have been going on. I think that my predecessors will be happy that many of them are still going on and evolving. First of all, I would like to say that this has been the term for online training. Why? Well, we did not have any other option. It was either online training or nothing. And yeah, online training is something that would happen sooner or later, but it was boosted this term definitely. And one of the main big projects that we had regarding online training was the Ifmsa competency model. I actually didn't know that the first draft was that old, let's say, in the history of Ifmsa. But yeah, this term, it's been the first time that it has been so big and so well implemented, I would say. We have had around 20 training sessions for not only for Ifmsa officials, but also for the international teams. And they were mostly delivered in the first months of the term so that it could be somehow coordinated with their handover. But also we still have some more sessions to do during the term and at the end of the term, for example, about handover. And yeah, I would like to say that this has been one of the milestones of the term. Then, well, so far we have had many online events. We had another online GA in March, where we also had NMO management sessions. And this time it was not as challenging in the previous August meeting because we already had some idea. We already had something as a reference that we could copy and improve. This time we had, again, 5 parallel streams within NMO management, which is actually good. I mean, we would not be able to have 5 parallel sessions every time in a normal GA because that would be a crazy amount of work. But in the online onset, fortunately, we do. So, well, it has some pros. We have also had 4 regional meetings in the online context. And also we will have the 5th, the Asia Pacific regional meeting quite soon at the end of July. And in all of these meetings, we are also having some NMO management sessions and even some regional meetings still online, and all of these have been super challenging, but I would like to say that so far it has been quite successful in terms of covering our members' needs and also their satisfaction in the end. So yeah, that's good. Then we have also been working on the trainers' education. I know that, yeah, this has been discussed for a long time in the previous terms, but luckily, in the last March meeting, in the last CB plenary, we approved the new concept note for the TNT. And this time we have included all of the hard stuff, all of the hard topics and skills that need to be implemented, and so that we don't only focus on leadership and communication, but also session design and the learning process, etc. It was approved. Unfortunately, we have not been able to host any TNT yet because, well, how to combine the TNT with the online context is something that we are still discussing, but eventually it will come to a reality. Also, we have been updating the CB Resources Center, in which we have, of course, many outlines for sessions, but also we have included many other tools and resources and materials that can be super useful for any trainer. And I really encourage all of you, my predecessors and any member in Ifmsa, to have a look, because it's a really impressive and helpful material. So we will share the link very soon again in all of our platforms, and so that you can access it easily. Again, we have been working with our online training platform. They started with this during last term, but still it had many things to fix, to improve, and to complete. Now it's completely ready, and we have actually had many online workshops and online courses in this platform. We are using Moodle, in case you don't know it, and you will have the chance to use it even more in the upcoming terms, because we are preparing more courses and more opportunities for you to see. This platform is accessible for any Ifmsa member, as long as you apply for a course or a workshop that is on this platform. And I can promise that it's a very complete tool and very promising, and I'm sure that we will be able to do amazing stuff here. Then we have also been working on the trainers pool and the CB IOGs. In every CB plenary, we updated the CB IOGs, just like we do with the bylaws. And now I would say that it's a quite good version of it, since the very beginning that we had a draft till the first version that we had in a plenary, which was hard to approve. I remember that. till the version that we have right now, I would say that I'm quite satisfied. Of course, we will keep on renewing them and improving them, but so far they are quite good. And the trainers pool, well, the trainers pool was open last year. Like, I think it had not, yeah, like last year. And so it's very new, it's a baby in the IFMSA, and there are still many things to improve, but I'm happy to say that we have many members in the trainers pool right now, and we are trying to also create a space for them to feel part of something, to feel part of the IFMSA and capacity building. We have new platforms for them to share experiences, for us to share our opportunities, and etc. And there's still a long way ahead, but I think we are on the right way. And finally, some of the projects that we have done lately in the IFMSA is a map of the stakeholders that we have in terms of capacity building. We did this because we would like to enhance and improve the potential collaborations with other NGOs or other organizations. We do have some MOUs with them already, but the actual cooperation when it comes to capacity building is not that well defined. So we are still working on that. And well, the term is not over yet, and we have many projects going on, many plans. One of the biggest ones is the pilot course, which is probably one of the biggest milestones in capacity building in general. The pilot course is basically an online course for everybody in IFMSA that will include the basic contents, like the 101 for every single field in IFMSA, not only capacity building, but also finances, PR, external affairs, and also every single one of the standing committees. So it's going to be the biggest online course in IFMSA, and it will hopefully be super helpful to every member in IFMSA. We are working on it right now, and it will be released quite soon. So please stay tuned. Then we will also have the first ever hybrid GA in August in Panama. Hybrid events are still quite a new concept in general in the world, but we are going to be one of the first organizations to host such an event. And well, stay tuned as well. Let's see how it goes. I am very, very hopeful on it. I think it will be great. And again, we will have NMO management as well. And finally, one of the things that we would like to achieve, or at least to start developing in this term, is the standardization of trainers education. Because right now, well, as you know, we have many, many different workshops and CB opportunities, not only within CB itself, but also in every standing committee, in every field of work in IFMSA. And even if they have been working on this before in previous terms, the actual regulations for what needs to be included mandatorily in every workshop in terms of trainers education is not that well defined. So we are working on this so that at least every workshop can have a specific minimum of content and training hours on these topics. This has not been achieved yet, as I said, but well, we are working on it. And here in this picture here, you can see my wonderful team. I think that you can also notice that the CBIT in the last terms has been bigger, because now, besides the regional assistants, we also have a core team with 4 to 5 assistants. I think it can be even bigger next term, we will see. And this is something positive, because it means that we are really defining our new streams or new parts of our work, and we are having people specialized or focused on them, which makes it more efficient. And yeah, this is it. I can tell you more updates maybe in some months while my term is over, but so far these are the main highlights of the term that is going on right now. And now I will give the floor to my wonderful successor, Zane, who will tell you about the main ideas and the main plans that he has for the upcoming term.
Thank you so much, Lou. Okay, hi again. For next term, I want to start by saying our top 3 values that we will be working on as CBIT for the term of 2021-2022, which are develop, implement, and invent. As my predecessor said or mentioned, they have been developing, working, and trying to invent a very big projects and try to implement them during their term. But as they said, 1 year or 1 term is not enough. So we will try to work on developing the already plans that we have, implement them, and work on inventing new things for the future, not necessarily for our current term. Capacity building as IT or in IFMSA International, as Lucia just said, is that it's well defined or has reached a very good level of development. So for next term, we will be trying to work more into reflecting into the NMOs themselves, into the people or the members that are the core concept for our capacity building. First, I would start with NMOs. The pilot course has been already established, the concept note, and it's being currently under structure. The standing committees, the CBIT, and almost all IFMSA ITs are working into uploading their courses and sessions right now at this very moment. For next term, we will work on updating the current content we have and try to include more content and make it more more spread and more specific for the needs of each NMO and each region within IFMSA. The second point will be capacity building in IFMSA regions. IFMSA has been taking the route of regionalization of the work, and we have noticed that each region within IFMSA have different capacity building needs. Like the Amar needs are not the same as European needs or the Americas or Africa. So as CBRAs or the CBIT in general, we will try to work on establishing capacity building regional plans for each region, and the CBRA will be the main coordinator for this. And the CBIT core team and me as VPCB will be in direct communication through the whole process during our term. The second point we will be working on is the trainers. The first point is education. As Lucia said, Haider, and almost all of you, you have been trying to standardize the educational systems or the educational plans for our trainers. With the establishment of trainers pool, and we finally have a trainers pool Facebook group, and we are implementing Moodle platform, which is a very nice online platform. We will try to use that into having more online discussions, more open spaces, and more specific targeted sessions for our trainers. The second point will be trainers camp. The trainers camp has been a dream for like 3 or 2 ITs previously, and due to COVID, we have not been able to implement it. Hopefully in my term, I will be the lucky one to implement the trainers camp for the first time. Third, we have the sessions and workshops. I would start with capacity building workshops update. As Lucia said, we have been updating the TNT. We have the Cbv Workshop, we have the mini FADI, but I think that we need to include the online part in some of these capacity building workshops. For example, the CBB or the mini FADI can be implemented online, but yet we don't have the documents or the concept notes for how to implement them in online settings. So I will try to include that and also bring to life again the TET or the TAT, which are the specified workshops for advanced trainers. More for sessions and workshops is the pre-GA Reformation. As you know that we have not been able to host a fully physical pre-GA for, let's say, the last 3 GAs. And we have been facing the declining in numbers of pre-GA participants for workshops due to high price or the flight tickets or everything. So I will work with Lucia and gathering feedback on how to redefine the pre-GA workshops, the pre-GA agenda, and the whole idea of the pre-GA itself. The final point is a cute one, which is capacity building beyond IFMSA. Like, we can't only think of capacity building within IFMSA itself. We need to bring it more into our external environment. So the first point will be eco-friendly capacity building. Since we will be having more physical capacity building events, hopefully, without COVID, we will try to include eco-friendly plans for each SRT, for each workshops, and for each training session that is happening in IFMSA or in any NMO. And finally, capacity building with externals. We have been noticing that capacity building in IFMSA is becoming really popular. Like for this term, I think we have received 4 or 5 requests from externals for collaboration or for having training sessions from IFMSA. So we will be working on further developing the already built by Lucia stakeholders mapping and try to work on more MOUs and more collaborations for IFMSA with other externals. I think this is a brief summary or introduction for the future, and I can't wait to see it in action. Back to you, Lucia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, this has been very, very interesting. And me, myself, I have learned many things about IFMSA history and capacity building history. So thank you very much. Hopefully we will see many of these projects happening in a very short time and in the upcoming term. And also, Amin, our moderator, will be able to see them because, well, in case you don't know, he is the president-elect for the next term. And now I will give the floor back to Amin so that we can continue with our open space.
Thank you so much, Lucia, for giving me the floor. And thank you to all of our guests for presenting your work over the years. As Lucia said, like, I also have learned so much. It has been very insightful. And of course, it's a big, big pleasure to learn more about the history of our federation. So thank you so much for your words and for your presentations. And now we will be moving on to the open space. So basically, we have a couple of questions that are prepared. And as we said, maybe in the beginning, we will be selecting a couple of speakers to give their interventions for each questions. And I kindly ask you to be as maybe concise as possible, as we are just a little bit running out of time. So we will start with the first question, which is, which of the milestones would you consider as decisive in the development of CB and IFMSA? And for this question, maybe we could have Andres, Andre, Frida, and also maybe Lucia to have a bit of recent perspective. So whoever wants to start, please, you have the floor.
Well, if you want, I don't have any trouble in starting. For me, I'll keep it short and brief with a surgical mind. I think one of the main milestones was actually going from one to a teamwork. One of the beautiful things that I see right now is that everybody has been working with a team, that everybody managed to outreach their limitations and actually go abroad and work with a full constitute team. And that for me is definitely one of the biggest milestones that that we're a lot stronger with others than just working alone. The other one probably is more up to date is the online work. As Lucia said, it's necessary. It was something that we started to talk about at the beginning, but it wasn't of our time, and it wasn't the time to start doing it. And right now, the what you've actually managed to do and the way you've been doing it seems definitely also a big milestone. And the last one is probably not a milestone in itself. It's not a point that we've reached and we've changed, but it's actually just simply maintaining the motivation. It's very nice to see that after 9 years, 10 years, the motivation is still there, and it's a continuous milestone that's very nice to see, and that I think it's also decisive for the development of the capacity building. So those would be my 3 points. Probably, yeah. Andre can say something different, or Frida or Lucia. I don't know. In any case, it's very nice to see.
Yeah, maybe I can continue and pick up from that. Also, 3 things come to mind, and I think the first one really goes to the founding fathers of this. Just that spark that has created the saying, let's create a system out of this mess that was training at the time, or there were sporadic events at the time. So I think the work that was done in the first term by Andres is really impressive, because I think in a way it might be easier to keep working on the ideas that already exist, or it might not be easier, but it's more of an evolutionary thing rather than a revolutionary. And I think in the beginning that was really something completely new, to decide to systematize it. And I think most of the things after that are sort of stemming from that. So I think that was definitely the first milestone, is saying, let's make a training support division. And then I think at a certain point, the capacity building was a natural progression from that. The second milestone, I would say, is the tendency to standardize and have these events purpose-driven, with very, very consciously. So that might be IOGs, it might be competency models, it might be standard session outlines. I think those are the next sort of philosophy shift, saying, we're not just here to have fun and learn random stuff, but let's do it in a way that serves a purpose. And then the third one is the digital revolution that's happening. Well, it started already happening, I guess, in a way, also in my term, when the first online course was made, but now has been really catalyzed also by the pandemic, and seeing the next, or what the future holds in terms of online training and online capacity building. I think this will really bring the opportunities to a lot more people who, now you won't have to travel to events anymore. You don't have to travel to events anymore anyway. And I think this just has the potential to open it up a lot to a much wider audience, while still keeping, the live events, but you can also make or even make them hybrid. There are so many possibilities that open up, and I think this will really also change things over the long term.
Okay, so I think I'm next. I'm going to keep it very short, because pretty much everything I had in mind has already been said by Andres and Andre. But the thing I really liked, the two things that came to mind mostly to me was, as Andres said, this whole working as a team. The fact that I can see, and Lucia mentioned it too, within the last years, we can see how the CBIT, for example, has been growing. There's more people in it because there's so much going on. And honestly, sometimes when we get to these positions, we have all these ideas in mind, and then we realize we cannot do them all on our own. We need to have help, and we need to, we have a team that we had the privilege of selecting. So we need to rely on them. We need to take the help. Sometimes we have all these ideas and we want to sit them down perfectly or whatever, to what perfect comes to your mind. And it's hard to let go and let other people do their job, but they're there for a reason. And it's a great thing to work as a team. And then out of what Andre said, I think this whole, anything that has to do with guidelines and standardization, that's huge. From the fact of when the first structure for a TNT was made, and then the competency model, and then the IOG, the IOG draft, and the IOGs in general. And now that I heard, I think it was Lucia, no, it was Haider, who mentioned this whole standardization of the workshops that form trainers. So anything that has to do with this, I think it's very important, because it helps ensure the quality of what we're doing, and it also makes it easier for the person next, who's coming next, to keep on doing this work and keep on improving it. And then lastly, I really loved the last thing Andre said about this the whole technology revolution. And I would have to agree with the fact that after, hopefully, when everything gets better because of COVID, it would be a great idea to keep doing both, going back to the physical in-person meetings. But then also there's a lot of people who don't have the opportunity to do this. So it would be incredible if online training and online workshops can continue to carry on. So having this kind of hybrid idea, I think it's incredible as well. So yeah, that's it.
Okay, I guess it's my turn now. And I want to keep it short, and I don't want to repeat anything that was said. So I would say that one of the biggest milestones was to include capacity building as an official thing in IFMSA in the bylaws. that was definitely a very, very big thing. And furthermore, I would say that creating, like, yeah, having the IOGs, I wouldn't say that it was a milestone of like done once with the first draft or the first version approved. I would say that the whole process till the very first draft until now has been a big milestone. And the second thing that the third thing that I would say is related to online training. Definitely, yeah, breaking that barrier and just launching into online training has been complicated, but it has been great. Now we are not afraid of it anymore. And just like Frida said, I hope that it will continue to be a very important part of our work in the upcoming terms.
Thank you so much, Lucia, and thank you to all who have answered this question. I think it's very interesting to hear that a lot of you had kind of like thought of the same things, and it was also shown in the presentations how it was like a big continuum of work throughout the terms, and how like a lot of ideas started in a term and were implemented in others. And yeah, that's very, very nice to see. And maybe like just a thought while you were also speaking, maybe we could also consider this webinar to be kind of a small milestone, because it's very rare to have this panel with us. So that's also very exciting. So moving on to the second question, which is, how do you think that the evolution of capacity building has affected the general work of the Federation? And yeah, I think for this question, maybe we could have Andre, George, and Haidar, if you would like to give us your perspective, and feel free to start.
Yeah, thank you for this question. It's very interesting. And if I may, I would also like to answer the last question, because then I need to go. I have to catch a ride. So I'll take that liberty to do that, and hopefully make it also shorter in that way. So to answer the first question, I think the transition to capacity building made a huge mind shift in the whole federation, saying, the trainers, they're not that weird bunch of people who like to come together and have their workshops and dance around in circles and sing songs. If I'm making fun a little bit right now, but they started realizing that what they do also in standing committees and in other fora is also capacity building. And it's that thing that has shifted from, oh, let's do training of, topics that might be interesting and are somewhat related to what we do, to how do we make a systematized education system for our organization and for the needs of our organization. And I think that has then further been reflected in how the standing committees work, how things work on the local level, on the national levels. And I think that was the biggest, let's say, contribution of CB to the general work of the Federation. And I'm very happy to also hear how things are developing, and they are also going in that direction. So, because my biggest fear would be that capacity building would let's say, not continue to be more and more isolated, but go on that path that it's more and more isolated within the Federation, dealing only with itself and its own challenges that it faces. But I see it's the opposite, that it really goes out and tackles also other all the facets of the Federation. And I think that's also very much in line with what I would like to see for the future of IFMSA capacity building, that it continues being this integrated thing in all its activities and events and all the things that IFMSA stands for. Is that if you want to do something, do it well, and to do it well, you need certain skills and you need certain competencies, and that's what capacity building is there for, to support you achieve that. And like I've said numerous times up until now in this webinar, it's not capacity building for the sake of capacity building, but with the sake of reaching higher goals in the other areas that the IFMSA works, and reaching those efficiently and competently, basically. And I think it's going in a great direction, and I would also very much like to see it going forward like that. And maybe finish off by saying that I hope this is not the last time I managed to participate in such an event. I've also learned a lot and been, let's say, re-inspired, seeing that, where things started and where things went on. And I'm happy to to rejoin at a later point. Thank you.
I can just continue. Thank you, Andre. I can just pick up what you also said. I think that is like one very important point for also the connection with all the standing committees. And for me, to wrap it up in 2 words, basically what the fact of capacity building the evolution has had is that on the one thing is that we have ensured that there's a certain continuation of the quality. In general, but also, of course, what we talked before, the quality of how training is facilitated in IFMSA, that we also had the discussion and reached a point where we discussed, like, what does it mean to facilitate? What does it mean to have a training that's not only like spending time on a certain topic, but really try to understand from a trainer perspective how learning does work, and how can we use this knowledge to have high impactful sessions.
Jumping on that, like, I don't have much to add about what Andrea and Georg already mentioned, but I totally agree with them. And for me, like, the main evolution what capacity building has on IFMSA is that the way that capacity building is evolving helps IFMSA to move forward as well. Because for me, the core of developing IFMSA is capacity building. And if we want to ensure quality in IFMSA, we have to ensure that we have strong capacity building to make sure that our members or officials are competent enough to do what they're required to do. And this comes by quality-based training sessions and quality-based capacity building events. So I will just keep it like this as a brief. For me, this is the main thing that capacity building has impacted IFMSA for the past, and this helps IFMSA to grow further and so on.
Thank you so much for answering that question. So I think that we still have 2 questions left, and I'm trying to be also very quick. So I apologize for that. To just maybe quickly talk about online capacity building, because it has been mentioned a lot. How do you envision the role of online capacity building in the upcoming years? And I think it's very interesting, as we have Georg, who told us that it has, like, the drafting started in his term. Then we have Haidar, who kind of also implemented that due to COVID, obviously, in the second half of the term, and now Lucia, that, yeah, obviously we're the COVID term, and Zain to speak about maybe the future plans. So I think this will be very, very interesting as well to hear from the 4 of you.
Thank you also for this question. As I mentioned before, like in my term, when we started talking about online training, nobody could know that something like a pandemic with this time frame will come up, also for IFMSA. But even more, it was important that we started this discussion also quite early. But going back to a time, hopefully very soon, where there is no pandemic anymore, I think this is going to be a very interesting conversation, because the question is, yes, online training helps to reach more people, and that was from the very beginning the idea of it. But of course, also as one person that really believes in also kind of the magic of training sessions in person, how do you handle and how do you make sure that it's not only going to online trainings? Because I think whenever there's a chance, and this is also the challenge for IFMSA, how can we ensure that people also have the possibility to have trainings in person? So I think it's a good addition. Online training is a very important addition, and right now it's necessary because of Corona. But coming to the next years, it's going. I think I'm really looking forward to watch how this is going to develop. I just think it's important that we find a way where both can very, very good and well coexist.
Yeah, like online trainings definitely are important, and we saw how important are them when we had these 2 terms of COVID. But still, like, I totally believe I love the spirit of physical sessions, and I'm not a huge fan of online sessions in general. And I do believe that it's important, but still, like, there are some sessions that should happen on physical settings, and there's no way that we can convert every single workshop in IFMSA to an online event. That's my personal perspective. I still believe that there should be some workshops which stay as physical, and other workshops can be online. Definitely online is going to have a huge impact on IFMSA in the future. I mean, it's providing accessibility to members worldwide, which cannot access physical settings due to visa issues, traveling issues, and so on. And it's definitely important. Yet, it's still important to have some specific workshops for physical settings that cannot be managed to happen online. So far, with the tools and facilities that we have, I mean, future, if there are more tools and facilities for online training sessions, this idea might change. But at the current moment, I don't really think that everything should be transferred to an online setting. But I do believe that this is a huge area that IFMSA should invest more money, time, and develop further. And I'm very happy with the work that is done so far. And I'm sure that next years, we will have more on the both levels, like asynchronous learning and synchronous learning implemented in our platform.
Okay, I will go now. I agree actually with everything that was said so far, and I would add that yeah, the debate whether every workshop can be done online or not has been going on for a while now, and I know that in some other organizations they do have TNT or their version of the TNT online, and well, this is something that we still need to consider if it's worth it or not. Nevertheless, I would say that the future or the biggest potential of online training in IFMSA is not just online workshops, but actually online courses, which are the asynchronous version of the online training that we have right now. And I think that they are really the key to the biggest development in online training right now. But well, we will see how it goes. Definitely, I agree that online training has come to stay here with us and to improve our work, not to substitute the face-to-face meetings and the work that we used to do before.
Okay, I think it's my turn now for the future of online capacity building within IFMSA. I believe that online capacity building is a necessity right now. We have more than 140 NMOs in IFMSA, and not all members can have physical events they can't attend to many different reasons. So online capacity building will be available and for sure will be for the next term. We are currently building the pilot course and we will work on more developing the pilot course for the future. Also, we will try to have regional pilot courses for each region to be more specified and more directed towards our members. For online workshops or online sessions, as I mentioned in my slides or previously as well, that we have some workshops that can be changed into online, but not all of them. For sure, me and my IT for next term, with the feedback and with everything from the previous terms, with your help, we will try to work on optimizing the experience of online capacity building, because right now and for the future, it will be integrated with the whole idea of capacity building. There is no only physical capacity building no more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zain, Luthia, Haidar, and Jok. So I guess that now we will move on to the final question, which is, let's say, about if you have any creative ideas, thoughts, anything that pops up in your heads right now about the future of capacity building. So in very short, what would you like to see happening in the IFMSA capacity building in the upcoming years? So this question is to all of you. If anyone would like to contribute to this question, please go ahead.
If you want, I mean, I'd probably say 2 words, and it's keep on training. Keep training as much as possible, online, presential, however you can. That's what I would like to see in IFMSA and capacity building. Very precise.
As well. Yes, and I'll keep it short as well. Like, there's 2 things. First, like the restructure of TNTs that we all want it to happen. Hopefully, it will happen soon. And trainers camp, which trainers can gather and meet and have a space where they can just be there.
I think I can go next. I think I would like to share a message. I know there's a lot of NMOs still who haven't gone to the capacity building transition, or don't even have established training supervision or capacity building in general. So for them, I would like to say to please take a chance on capacity building. I swear it pays off. It's great. If you have no idea how to start, if you don't know what to do, reach out to Lucia, reach out to Zane. They will be more than glad to answer any of your questions. Sometimes we're too scared of reaching out to people because, oh my God, no, she's a VPCB, he's a VPCB elect. They're not even gonna answer me. Yes, they do. Yes, we do. You might see them as somebody with a position, but they're young people, they're students. I would say we're students, but anyways, yeah. And also, there's also that's why we have capacity building regional assistance as well. So yeah, take a chance.
I can just continue. First of all, I think also seeing from this discussion, capacity building really has made a huge development in a very, very good direction. And I think that's very important that this continues. But at the same time, I think it's very important for capacity building itself, for the people within capacity building, to stay open-minded, also to change, in the sense of, you see what just have been happening in the past 7, 8, 9 years. And I'm sure this is going to continue, that we need to adapt to the situations that we have, to the situation that IFMSA is in. And I think it's a very important part and thought to not always keep with the same things because you've done it always this way, but always be open to change and develop further.
Okay, I will go now. I have two things to say. The first one is quite short, and it's that I would love to see more girls leading IFMSA and leading capacity building. So far, we have been 2 VPCBs, and I guess there was some other female TSDD before, but I don't know them. And girls, I know you are there. I know you're capable of working in IFMSA. So please stand up and raise your voices, because we are here and we do want to listen to you. And then second, I would love to see IFMSA exploring the possibilities within service learning, which basically means learning while you are providing a service. And what I mean with this is that we don't stay only within the IFMSA bubble, but we use all the skills and knowledge that we get in our workshops, and we go out of IFMSA to the real world, and we use it in real life with other organizations, with other people, universities, and we get more experience and we develop our skills while helping people and doing some other project out of the IFMSA. This is something that I would love to happen.
I believe it's my turn now. For me, I would love to see more people applying, more people going for capacity building initiatives, for capacity building experiences, because as my colleague said, take the action, try to be open-minded, get out from your comfort zone, because this is where you learn, because this is where you develop, or where you get the full experience of capacity building. I would like to use this as an opportunity to promote for all our capacity building events, or for example, the TPAB. Please do apply for the TPAB and go for all our calls and everything we open, because you maybe feel shy, or you think that you don't have that experience or that knowledge. We all have been there. I'm sure it's me or anyone from my predecessors have been in your shoes. So just to try to learn, just apply, do your best, and everything will work out finally. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you for your very inspiring words. Thank you also for responding to all of the questions and for preparing for this and for joining us today. I apologize for both the viewers and to you for maybe rushing through these last questions, but unfortunately, we were running a bit late with the time. And yeah, I just want to say thank you. I have been honored to moderate this this webinar. It truly is an honor, and it's it has been amazing to hear from you and to see you all here. And I thank you for all your contributions for the IFMSA CB, but I think Lucia is maybe more appropriate to talk about CB. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Lucia, for the opportunity. And thank you to our viewers. And now I will pass it on to Lucia for maybe some closing words.
Thank you, Amin. And thank you, all of you. I am very, very happy about this webinar and this CB Cafe. It's always wonderful to see how some people did great things in IFMSA, and those great things led to even greater things. I am super proud and happy to see that all of us really tried to continue the projects that were started before, and because that is, in the end of the day, the only way to do bigger things. And we are doing it. We are succeeding, and it's thanks to every single one of you. So thank you very much to all my predecessors, and good luck to my successor. It's been an honor to gather today, and I think that our members will enjoy it, really. So yeah, that's all. Thank you again. And now I'm sure that we will be able to keep in touch and to maybe do some other projects, maybe next term or sometime soon, and hopefully face-to-face in a nice SRT. Thank you very much. And this is the end of our webinar. So thank you to all of the members watching, and see you around.